Thank you very much. I wanted to, it's interesting, a book is sold a year before it comes out. And originally when I wrote this, it took 3 years to write, even though it's only 250 pages. But we thought we would hide the name of the hospital. And so that's where the Gorman State thing came from, because I wanted something that rhymes with Gomorrah, and I'll get to why it's called Gomorrah. So, but that kind of got in the first publicity packet that was sent out a year ago. And then I thought about it for a minute, and I thought, that's ridiculous. People will know I work at NAACP in about 6 seconds. So we changed it to NAACP, and it just sort of, it's like this thing that's out there that I can't get rid of. And everywhere I go, it says Gorman, and no one knows what I'm talking about. I work at Napa State. The book's about Napa State. The whole talk is about Napa State. This is actually the first time anyone has been inside Napa State and told the story on the outside. There's some newspaper stuff, which I'm going to quote to you. I'm going to read to you from the book. But if you want to know what goes on inside there, it's the largest private or largest forensic hospital, at least in California, or close to it. And there is, the whole reason I wrote it is I didn't know what went on there. When I came there, I showed up. No one told you. No one tells you. Any physician, they don't discuss it. And I walked in, and there's a brawl going on. And a man is hit on top of the head with a chair who later dies. Inside that hospital, they will admit to 3,000 assaults a year. Now, I'll read to you what an assault is. Now, that's a crime. These are bleeding, broken bones, kicked in the head. It may be as high as 10,000. Once I got some clandestine emails, it may be higher. So I thought, my patients are the ones getting the crap beat out of them. My staff, mainly women, are getting assaulted on a regular basis. Half of them are out on disability. They don't have a voice. I'm not complaining about my job. I'm well paid. I could leave tomorrow. That's not a problem. The patients can't leave. They're the ones absorbing the 3,000 beatings a year. That's, but if quick math, it actually works out to 10 a day, which I'm going to read you some stuff about that. So I'm going to give you some facts. They asked me if I wanted to do a PowerPoint. And I'm a Luddite. I was born way a long time ago, and I thought I really should have done that, but it would have been a real fiasco. So I'm going to just show you some pictures, because what I want to do is I want to personalize those 3,000 assaults. When I've been on NPR and I've been on national TV and I've talked about this book, people just are overwhelmed. They just go, that can't be true. And what goes on in there simply can't be true, that literally 4 miles from now, someone's getting the hell beat out of them right now. And it goes on all day long, every day. That's 10 a day for 15 years. We've had staff killed. We've had patients killed. It's in the newspaper, which I'm going to read to you. It's episodically in the newspaper. But it's right by, oddly enough, it's 7 miles from the French Laundry. It's in the middle of the food capital of the world. And inside that fence, 10 people are getting beaten up every day. And nothing happens and no one knows about it. So that's what the book is about. It's about it's about me, it's about my family, but it's mainly about the patients and the staff who work there, who are the true heroes. What I wanted to do was read a little bit from the book first, then I'm going to tell you some facts about Napa State Hospital. I'm going to read you from the LA Times, I'm going to read you from the New York Times, so you think I'm not making this up, because that's what people always say. You have to be making this stuff up. Anyway, this is the preface to the book. I'm going to read for maybe 5 minutes just to give you an idea about what the book is about. All the patients have been changed. None of the events are actual events. It was not an attempt to out the patients. It's one of these unusual times where myself, my patients, and the staff are all on the same side of this. We're faced with an epidemic of violence that everyone wants it to stop, and we're struggling for how to get this to stop. So this is how the book begins. It says, Raymond Boudreau and I sat at opposite ends of a rickety wooden table with him nearest the door. This was a mistake. 2 fluorescent ceiling tubes lit the cramped space, and the walls were surplus beige. A single window in the middle door looked out into a hallway. The July air hung musty and still. My chair made a tiny screech against the chipped linoleum floor as I slid it forward. Mr. Boudreau, good afternoon, I said. I'm Dr. Seeger. Boudreau didn't reply. Clad in robin's egg blue hospital scrubs, he was a hulking black man with shoulders wide as goalposts. I felt fixed in his gaze. Mr. Boudreau, I tried again. Boudreau's eyes didn't waver. I shifted uncomfortably, wondering how long someone could actually go without blinking. As a psychiatrist, I'd recently been hired to run an inpatient unit at a large state forensic mental hospital. It was the kind of dangerous, unsettling place made familiar by the fictitious Baltimore State in Silence of the Lambs. After a week of training, Raymond Boudreau was the first patient I'd talked to alone. I was rushing to get home. It was late. The room had been convenient. "I'm your new doctor," I persisted. "How are you feeling, sir?" Another pause. Then Boudreau's impassive face changed. "You're a bloodsucker, aren't you?" He smiled, his Creole-tinged voice smooth as glass. He tipped his head and studied me like a curious dog. His eyes narrowed. My heart leapt. A forensic mental hospital isn't like a regular mental hospital. The patients aren't just psychotic, they're also criminals. They're the school shooters, James Holmeses, and Jeffrey Dahmers of the world. I'd seen Raymond Boudreau on CNN when he was first arrested. Boudreau's breathing accelerated. "You and that fucking district attorney," he said, "you're both in this together. I know your kind. You'll beat a man to death and suck the blood out of his corpse." Boudreau, a New Orleans native, had graduated from Yale with an MBA. He'd worked in management for a bank in San Francisco. Then he became ill. A month after his termination, he killed his boss and several co-workers with a shotgun. "I'm going to strangle that faggot DA," Boudreau snarled as he stood. "Or you." His massive frame partially obstructed the door, and I became acutely aware of the seating error. Panicked, I stood as well. With hands as large as skillet, Boudreau grabbed the edge of the table and pushed it forward, pinning my thighs to the wall. My chair clattered to the floor. I looked frantically toward the small window into the hallway, but saw nothing. I reached for the belt alarm we'd been issued for situations just like this and remembered that it was still in my office. Sweat rolled off the crest of Boudreau's shaven head. "Don't move, you son of a bitch," he seethed and pushed the table harder. Amid the terrified jumble in my head, an old piece of advice appeared. If you're ever cornered by an angry patient, a medical school instructor had once told me, keep talking. "Tell me about your crime." The veins in Boudreau's neck bulged and his eyes widened. The table hit bone in my legs. He took a couple of choppy breaths, and then the pressure on my legs waned. Boudreau's head dropped, and his stare softened. He let go of the table, sat back down, and put a hand on his forehead. He looked smaller. He looked mortal. "I killed my closest friends," Boudreau said slowly. "What kind of person does that?" I edged out from behind the table. "A person with an illness does that," I said, sidling toward the door. I reached around to slump Boudreau and grabbed the door handle. "That's why you're here and not in prison. You're not bad, you're sick." Opening the door, I glanced down the long hallway and hurriedly waved toward Lola Palanke, a unit nurse, and two strapping psych techs who hustled toward me. My legs began to tremble, but I managed to turn back to Boudreau. "Will you be okay?" Boudreau said nothing. "The staff will help you back to your room," I said, and stumbled aside as the cavalry arrived. The two techs escorted Boudreau back down the hall. Dark hair, 30s, Palanke stood before me with her hands on her hips. We were toe to toe. For the second time, I'd been backed against a wall. Although I grimaced in pain, she glared up at me. "Were you in there alone with Mr. Boudreau?" Palanke asked in Tagalog accented English. "Yes." "Didn't they tell you not to do that?" "Yes." "He could have killed you." I caught a breath. I know I was really frightened. "Didn't you learn anything from that terrible first day?" she said. I touched the stitches on the back of my head. "I just thought," I didn't know what to say. "We need you, Doc," Palanke said and touched my arm. "Please get smarter."